Imagine stepping onto a soundstage in the spring of 1977, lights blazing and cameras rolling, while millions of families tune in to watch two young brothers solve mysteries in neat sweaters. Then imagine hearing the maples rustle outside and wondering if beneath that wholesome veneer there hid something darker, something dangerous, something the network begged you not to see. That hidden undercurrent was the real reason the Hardy Boys went dark, and only Sean Cassidy ever had the courage to admit what nobody else dared to speak aloud. It started with a simple question about why teenage heroes never face real trauma. What if the mysteries they chased on screen? Sean Cassidy, the fresh-faced son of Hollywood royalty, signed on to play Joe Hardy with an appetite for realism. He had grown up in the glare of flashing cameras, haunted by his father's mental breakdowns and the constant comparisons to his older brother, David Cassidy. When network executives handed him a clean script about simple puzzles and neat conclusions, he asked for more. He proposed episodes tackling drug addiction, systemic injustice, and the raw grit of urban life. Instead of applause, he was met with polite nods and firm refusals. The message was clear: teenage escapism, not teenage awakening. Period. He faced an immediate schism. The wholesome image that made him bankable clashed violently with the darker impulses stirring inside. The network's focus groups championed lighthearted mysteries and comforting resolutions. Cassidy yearned for emotional authenticity, a way to explore how fear, loss, and moral ambiguity shaped young hearts. His pitch for a storyline about police corruption fell on deaf ears. Instead, he was instructed to keep Joe Hardy smiling. That smile became a mask, a desperate shield between the public's expectations and Cassidy's creative longing. That truth remained hidden forever. Behind closed doors, Cassidy's world felt like a pressure cooker hours before a storm. His childhood scars, witnessing his father's manic episodes, carrying the weight of his mother's fame, and craving approval in the shadow of a superstar brother, infused his ideas with a darker edge. On set, he pushed writers to paint Joe Hardy as more than just a teen slith. He wanted him to question authority, to stare down bullies fueled by real-world corruption, and to confront the moral compromises that lurked in every corner. Every suggestion was met with a rehearsed apology and an unspoken threat: ratings over reality. As episodes aired, whispers began to stir among devoted fans. Sharp-eyed viewers noticed fleeting symbols hidden in shadows, cryptic newspaper headlines glimpsed for a split second, and dialogue that hinted at trauma beneath the surface. These accidental breadcrumbs fueled online debates long before social media exploded. Theories emerged: was Joe Hardy haunted by guilt? Did the show's sanitized exterior conceal a commentary on the dark world outside living rooms? Each clip rewatched revealed new layers, as though someone had tried to signal an underbelly of pain waiting to be unlocked. Cassidy watched silently as his half-formed rebellion unfolded in whispers. Behind the scenes, network executives grew uneasy. Boardroom conversations shifted from praising ratings to questioning whether Cassidy's unsanctioned emphasis on darkness threatened the show's family-friendly brand. Advertisers demanded assurances that no explicit content crept into Saturday evening slots. Producers claimed the original vision remained intact while tightening every creative leash. Cassidy persisted, securing small concessions. A flash of moral ambiguity here, a ruthless villain there, gradually intensifying the gravity. He mastered strategic compromise under corporate pressure, threading deeper themes through every story. But with each subtle escalation, the gap between his vision and the sanitized broadcast widened, inching the show toward collapse. In an unexpected twist, Cassidy's quiet rebellion aligned with changing cultural tides. Audiences were growing restless, seeking content that acknowledged their own brushes with loss, injustice, and moral complexity. Underground discussions in fanzines and early online forums circulated theories that The Hardy Boys was actually a coded cautionary tale about the failure of institutions. Suddenly, Cassidy's furtive signals resonated. Even mainstream critics began to wonder if the show's creative heartbeat was pulsing beneath the surface all along. Ratings crept upward as viewers tuned in for episodes rumored to contain the heaviest subtext. The network could no longer ignore seismic shifts. On the eve of Season 3, Cassidy drew a line in the sand. He insisted Joe Hardy face genuine trauma or he would quit. The network froze, unwilling to gamble ratings for depth. Cassidy counted on his growing influence, but braced for fallout. Rumors flew that he'd rather leave his own legacy than dilute its meaning. Tension crackled on set like storm clouds. Fans sensed a coming breakdown. Would his stand end the series or ignite the darkness he'd chased? The network's refusal to let Joe Hardy confront real stakes didn't just threaten the show's integrity. It ignited a chain reaction that reshaped Sean Cassidy's career forever. By the spring of 1978, production on the third season was already overheating. Crew members whispered in corridors about tense script meetings, where Cassidy clashed with the head writers over scenes he deemed too sterile. He demanded that Joe Hardy respond emotionally to violence, not just solve puzzles. He argued that a young detective who witnessed a school shooting, for example, should struggle with nightmares as well as clues. Writers reminded him of the time slot and the demographic surveys: no guns, no grief, no moral gray zones. Cassidy slammed his script on the table and walked out. That act of defiance rippled through the studio. Some producers admired his commitment, others saw it as a rebellious tantrum. In one infamous meeting, an executive leaned back in his leather chair and brusquely asked, "Are you making kids' TV or an R-rated thriller?" Cassidy countered quietly, "I'm telling the truth of how trauma shapes who we become." The exec sighed and pressed a button on his sideboard, calling in the network's legal counsel. The hidden clause in Cassidy's contract gave the network veto power over any storyline deemed unsuitable, an all-powerful editorial sword suspended over every page. Cassidy realized he'd been cornered. Behind the scenes, a softer rebellion flourished. A small circle of writers and directors covertly slipped Cassidy's heavier themes into background details. In one episode, a grieving mother's silhouette lingered on a rain-streaked window for a beat too long, hinting at loss. In another, Joe Hardy's journal briefly revealed a newspaper clipping about a local crime wave that mirrored real-world headlines. None of these moments earned airtime recognition, but diehard fans caught them and began swapping VHS recordings in sealed envelopes. This underground exchange didn't just keep interest alive. It stoked a cult following that outlasted primetime itself. Still, official ratings declined. Parent letters shifted from fan mail praising family fun to compliments on the show's unexpected depth, but also complaints that Joe Hardy's world felt too heavy. Advertisers blinked when late-night calls from focus group moderators flagged unsettling undercurrents. No matter how subtle, the darker tones were fracturing the network's polished image. At a board meeting, the merchandising director warned that toy sales had stalled, blaming parents uneasy about action figures connected to moral ambiguity. The CFO agreed to pause licensing deals until assurances of full creative alignment were delivered. The network tightened its grip. Faced with mounting opposition, Cassidy reached a crossroads. He could comply, letting Joe Hardy remain an unblemished hero destined for comfortable resolutions, or he could step away and risk his rising star status. In May of 1978, he chose the latter. At a press conference announcing the renewal of the series, Cassidy delivered a surprise. With characteristic composure, he praised the show's success, thanked the fans for their loyalty, and then announced he would not be returning. Journalists gasped. The headlines the next morning asked, "Sean Cassidy quits Hardy Boys, burns out or burned out." Speculation ran wild. Some insiders whispered that he'd been forced out. Others believed he'd walked away on principle. The truth was more nuanced. He refused to perpetuate an illusion. Cassidy's departure marked the end of an era. The network scrambled to recast Joe Hardy and rebrand the series, but the fragile magic unraveled. Season 3 stumbled under the weight of truncated storylines and hastily rewritten characters. Viewership plummeted from family audiences who felt betrayed and from cult fans who missed Cassidy's guiding hand. Despite attempts to lean into campy thrillers, complete with over-the-top villains and cartoonish hastes, the show never regained its footing. By early 1979, ABC quietly canceled the series. Ratings had sunk by nearly half. A piece of television history faded from the schedule, leaving behind a bittersweet legacy of what might have been. In the aftermath, Cassidy retreated from the spotlight. He disappeared from Hollywood for 40 years, taking refuge in writing rooms and production offices far from primetime cameras. In those decades, he wasn't simply gone. He was evolving. Behind the scenes, he honed his craft on smaller projects that allowed him to explore dark themes without censorship. He wrote stage plays that examined family trauma, produced independent films grappling with addiction, and directed documentaries about justice gone wrong. None of these works made national headlines, but they polished his skill for weaving contrast, juxtaposing light and shadow in human stories, in ways that primetime never permitted. Meanwhile, loyal fans kept the legend alive. Bootleg recordings of Lost, Hardy Boys scripts circulated at conventions, online forums, once small message boards and now sprawling social media threads, traced every cryptic symbol in the original episodes. Some viewers believed that the seemingly innocent color palettes contained hidden codes, signaling narrative beats about corruption or loss. Others dissected the sound design, claiming that background music shifts hinted at emotional undercurrents. Academics even published papers on subtext in juvenile television, analyzing how Cassidy's subtle insertions defied genre norms. The Whisper Network grew so loud that streamers eventually licensed the show for archival release, marketing it to a new generation hungry for retro mysteries with a dark edge. Then came 2018, the watershed moment when Cassidy reemerged as executive producer of a hit medical drama, New Amsterdam. He infused a network series with the same fierce authenticity that had defined his early career. He inserted storylines exploring systemic healthcare failures, cultural biases in medicine, and the emotional cost of saving lives. Critics hailed it as a radical departure for network television, yet audiences connected deeply, recognizing Cassidy's signature blend of heart and grit. Everywhere he turned, executives insisted on safe territory. Everywhere he wrote, he carved out spaces for confronting real pain. It was the creative victory he'd been denied during the Hardy Boys. By refusing Netflix's poured $15 million offer to reboot the original series, Cassidy made one final statement. He told them flat out that he wouldn't sign on unless they allowed an honest portrayal. No sugarcoating trauma, no shortcuts to feel good endings. Streaming executives, wary of alienating blockbuster advertisers, declined. Cassidy walked away, unruffled. For him, authenticity wasn't negotiable. That stand echoed the same conviction that led him to exit the Hardy Boys 40 years earlier. Today, when fans rewatch those old episodes, they no longer see just a teen detective series. They see the first lines of a subversive manifesto. Every flash of shadow, every clipped headline in a background newspaper, every flicker of unresolved emotion becomes part of a larger tapestry, woven by Cassidy himself. The network may have silenced him, but those hidden clues endure. They whisper the real reason. The Hardy Boys went dark. Because only darkness could illuminate the truth, nobody dared to speak. The network's attempt to bury the darkest material only fueled the myth. Long after graceful credits faded, digital archivists began to scour the VHS transfers, spotting patterns overlooked in broadcast, a blink of lightning by a lamppost that seemed to spell out truth. A raven's silhouette cast across Joe's face just as he pondered a moral question. And a fragment of dialogue cut from international versions, as though a secret director's cut existed beneath the official reel. In the early 2000s, a group of determined fans launched an online collective called Hardy and Cedars. They reverse-engineered old tapes, frame by frame, stacking images to expose hidden messages. Using subtitled translations from dubbing tracks, they uncovered entire lines excised from the American broadcasts. Lines that explicitly referenced systemic inequality and the failures of judicial systems. These whispers of discontent had been edited out, yet their resonance remained, echoing through the corridors and schoolyards of small-town America long after primetime claimed the narrative. Armed with newfound evidence, Hardy insiders convened virtual symposiums hosted by universities with media studies departments. Graduate theses emerged on the political subtext of teenage sleuths, dissecting how Cassidy's brief influence had challenged sanitized television. One paper charted the network's intervention points, mapping them like surgical scars. Every time the plot edged toward real trauma, an editorial guillotine fell. Another considered whether the show's canceled reboot, nearly immortalized in ink, held the key to the complete story. In a Los Angeles estate auction in 2010, a battered trunk surfaced containing handwritten pages in Sean Cassidy's unmistakable scrawl. Episode outlines he'd surrendered when he walked away. Among them was Shadow on Elm Street, a script where Joe Hardy investigates a police trailer housing detainees post-curfew, exposing systemic abuse and ending in a scene so explosive the network ordered every print destroyed. But one copy escaped, discovered by a fan living near Universal's old archives. It circulated as a PDF heard, whispered about in niche corners of the internet. Those 10 lost pages painted a radically different climax to the Hardy Boys saga. Joe Hardy's induction into a moral gray world. Haunted by guilt for failing to save a friend who fell victim to a corrupt guard. Scenes described veiled references to busboy strikes, racial profiling in small town diners, and a courtroom showdown where Joe nearly pleads guilty to contempt of court. The intended final line, scrawled in Cassidy's margin, read, "Sometimes truth hurts more than silence." That sentiment, more than any neat puzzle, was meant to define their legacy. The revelation sent ripples through streaming platforms, legacy channels offering classic family entertainment, repackaged the Hardy Boys as The Dark Origins, complete with commentary from media historians and surviving crew members. They played the Lost scripts aloud, with voice actors reenacting the forbidden scenes. Fans noted how Joe Hardy's voice cracked as he confronted systemic failures, an anguished performance Cassidy had lobbied for, only to see it silenced initially. Today, the mythos of the Hardy Boys is inseparable from Cassidy's journey. When viewers rewatch an early scene, where Joe casually solves a stolen necklace caper, they now see premonitions of deeper wounds. The innocent sleuth becomes a wounded ally, one who learned to read more than magnifying glasses. The human frailty behind every mystery board. Darker fans argue that Joe Hardy pioneered a new archetype, one that would later crystallize in anti-heroes across television drama. Series like HBO's gritty detective epics unknowingly inherited the code Cassidy embedded. The sharp cut from a smiling Joe Hardy to a silhouette in rain is mirrored in modern noir. The hero's wholesome face, age shattered by a glimpse of blood on the curb. Streaming thrillers with teenage protagonists now embrace moral complexity, citing early references to Cassidy's show as an inspiration. His ghostly fingerprints are in every twist that refuses a neat resolution. Podcasts such as Behind the Velvet Curtain invited ex-producers to share anecdotes. One assistant director confessed to hiding the only raw footage of a discarded episode under a floorboard, fearful it would be destroyed. He described sneaking onto the set at dawn, camera in hand, capturing Joe Hardy pacing an abandoned factory lit by flickering fluorescent tubes. A raw portrayal of PTSD no one in primetime was ready to broadcast. But the most tantalizing thread remains, what nobody has yet pieced together, a rumored final scene storyboard. According to a fragmented note passed to Hardy insiders, the original arc was to conclude with Joe Hardy dialing 911 to report police brutality, only for the line to go dead as the camera panned to his brother, now disillusioned, staring at a bullet-ridden sign. That dual crescendo, one of action, one of paralysis, would have blown away the cliché of youthful triumph, replacing it with a sobering vow of real-world accountability. Fans still hunt for that storyboard in archives, private collections, and vaults. The network, now buried under mergers and buyouts, claims no record exists. Some insiders whisper that the negative reels were shredded to protect sponsors. Others believe the notes lie in a silent vault, too incriminating to see daylight. Yet the allure of uncovering the final piece of that jigsaw puzzle ensures there will always be someone zooming in frame by frame, listening for an echo of a single forbidden word. And here, we circle back to the essence of why the Hardy Boys went dark, because Sean Cassidy dared to embed the fractures of society into a show kids watched before bedtime. He risked his rising stardom to ask uncomfortable questions. What if our heroes can bleed? What if justice isn't always blind to bias? What if silence is complicity? Only darkness could illuminate those truths, cast them against the pop culture canvas, and insist we look closer. In releases in academic journals, in late-night conspiracy podcasts, the whispered question endures: what was Joe Hardy truly searching for? Not dusty clues or hidden cameras, but the haunting recognition that adulthood comes not with solved puzzles, but with unanswered questions that change us forever. Even as the Hardy Boys faded from primetime and settled into retro syndication, the hidden subtext Sean Cassidy embedded refused to stay buried. In 2022, a small darkroom of archivists discovered unedited camera rolls in a private collection near Universal's backlot. These rolls contained raw takes of scenes cut before broadcast, revelations of unfinished dialogue, lingering close-ups, and jagged cuts that revealed Cassidy's true vision. In one clip, Joe Hardy stares directly into the camera, sweat and tears mingling, as he finally confronts the network's sanitizing mandates, pleading for viewers to remember real fear. In another, the tearful outline of a grieving mother trembles against a doorframe, her silhouette illuminated only by a single overhead lamp. The atmosphere of those uncut scenes reignited the dormant flame of speculation fans had fanned for decades. Soon a documentary titled Under the Hardy Surface premiered at a niche festival in Berlin. Filmmakers stemmed from independent studios that thrived on unraveling cult phenomena, and they had unearthed the raw footage, stitched together alongside interviews with former crew members, scribbled script notes still stained with coffee, and testimony from writers who risked careers to slip Cassidy's themes into background frames. The film exposed the editorial battles, showing transcripts where executives drew angry red lines through pages that questioned police integrity, social bias, and the messy psychology of teenage grief. The documentary became a sensation in arthouse circles, prompting mainstream outlets to reevaluate the simplistic image of Saturday night sleuths and opening a door for the hidden story to walk into daylight. Streaming services then struck deals for the heavily annotated director's cut, featuring optional commentary tracks by original editors who recalled the moment they had to excise lines about teen PTSD and systemic oppression. One editor remembered hiding a fragment of a line, "Even heroes cry," in the blooper reel, hoping a sharp-eyed viewer might stumble across it. Subscribers began binge, streaming with subtitles activated, mineralizing new layers in familiar mysteries. Online chat rooms lit up with discussion threads titled, "What Did They Remove?" and "Cassidy Code Decoded." Suddenly, school libraries cataloged the Hardy Boys DVDs under social studies as much as juvenile fiction, and media scholars cited the show in chapters about subversion on network television. By mid-2023, the narrative DNA Cassidy injected found its way into a generation of teenage series. Riverdale's brooding arches, Euphoria's visceral confessions, and Stranger Things' willingness to expose government malfeasance all share echoes of the faint signals Joe Hardy first broadcast decades earlier. Showrunners openly admit that Cassidy's defiance of safe storytelling inspired them to risk polarizing content. They argue that audiences evolved and craved honesty, not armor-polished heroes. The transformation rippled beyond television, reshaping young adult fiction, graphic novels, and podcast dramas eager to confront unfiltered anguish and moral conflict. In fan communities around the globe, cosplay conventions evolved into immersive experiences that not only celebrated retro fashion, but also staged interactive mystery escapes echoing Cassidy's darker mysteries. Attendees donned 1970s attire and worked through escape rooms themed around lost Hardy Boys scripts. The clues about systemic violence and fracturing family dynamics were slyly woven into puzzles about dusty clues and cryptic letters. Even merchandise design shifted. Action figures came with miniature press releases and coded newspapers. Fans shared unboxing videos detailing hidden messages, and subscription boxes shipped out evidence kits, inviting subscribers to analyze archival transcripts. This participatory culture underscores how Cassidy's legacy became less about passive viewership and more about active investigation. Sean Cassidy himself resurfaced to address this phenomenon in a rare interview with a public radio station. He described feeling both humbled and startled by the community-driven resurrection of his early work. Cassidy admitted that when he first conceived the darker episodes, he believed audience curiosity would dissipate after broadcast. He never foresaw fans, scholars reconstructing lost pages, or young creators drawing inspiration from his veiled warnings. In that interview, he offered a rare glimpse of his creative blueprint. "I wanted to show that solving a mystery is less about the culprit and more about understanding what we carry inside us. We fix one external puzzle, but the unanswered questions within can break our hearts." His words echoed across social channels, prompting renewed academic conferences and fan film festivals devoted to the ethic he championed. As their whispers grow louder, the hidden currents of the Hardy Boys serve as a reminder that creative courage can resonate long after the spotlight dims. Cassidy's original insistence on wrestling with trauma rather than avoiding it transformed a seemingly simple teen drama into a living text that evolves with every rewatch, every frame-by-frame analysis, and every inquiry into what television could become when storytellers refuse to play it safe any longer with impunity. The shadows of Joe Hardy's legacy extend far beyond vintage reruns and grainy VHS transfers. New creators continue to mine the Hardy Boys' hidden currents for inspiration, weaving threads of moral ambiguity into stories aimed at audiences who grew up craving something more than puzzle-solving adventures. Streaming platforms now commission shows that openly credit Cassidy's underground manifesto, highlighting themes of institutional failure and personal responsibility. These modern series aren't just darker for shock value. They mirror Cassidy's belief that heroism involves grappling with systemic issues, not just unmasking the perpetrator. That ethos has become a creative lodestar for writers determined to blend entertainment with unflinching honesty. At universities across the country, seminars on subversive storytelling in juvenile media attract scholars dissecting the DNA of Cassidy's vision. Graduate students present papers on how a 1977 Saturday night detective drama anticipated debates on policing and mental health decades before. Prestige TV embraced them. Media festivals host panel discussions titled Coding Rebellion: The Secret Language of the Hardy Boys, featuring surviving crew members alongside academics who trace the lineage from subtle background cues to mainstream narrative techniques. These dialogues have elevated a once-dismissed teen series into a case study of creative resistance, proof that even network constraints can't fully extinguish a storyteller's resolve. In fandom circles, the phenomenon has blossomed into something akin to digital archaeology. Amateur investigators deploy AI-driven video analysis to unearth microsecond frames and audio artifacts that escaped notice during initial broadcasts. Online repositories catalog every instance Joe Hardy pauses at a crosswalk, every extra's fleeting glance in a reflective window, and every mismatched audio track from international dubs that hints at deleted dialogue. This obsessive attention to detail isn't about pedantry. It's a collective act of homage, a testament to how Cassidy's whispers of discomfort resonated so deeply that viewers refused to accept the polished surface. They became collaborators, decoding a blueprint for a television revolution still unfolding. The merchandising world. Long content to churn out kid-friendly memorabilia has caught up with this craving for authenticity. Boutique toy makers release limited edition evidence kits that include replica props, paper clippings from lost scripts, and directors' marginalia reproductions. Fan conventions feature immersive live action mysteries where participants solve puzzles about corrupt small town councils or exhumed cold cases, all under the guise of channeling the Hardy brothers' investigative spirit. Even themed escape rooms advertise Chassidy's Cut, an experience built around reassembling shredded script pages to expose a storyline about juvenile incarceration. These interactive tributes underscore how Cassidy's original vision became a participatory culture, blurring the lines between viewer and detective. Meanwhile, Sean Cassidy himself has returned sporadically to the narrative, offering new insights that feed the fire. In a recent podcast appearance, he shared memories of late-night editing sessions where he'd deliberately extend a shot to let emotional tension simmer beneath the surface. He revealed that every omitted scene was cataloged in a personal archive, with notes on why each line mattered. Although most of those materials remain private, Cassidy has hinted that he may one day release a comprehensive memoir or definitive director's cut, promising deeper context for the stories fans have pieced together over decades. The mere suggestion of that release sends ripples through the community, reigniting speculation about what else remains unseen. To a generation raised on binge, watching and secret commentaries, the Hardy Boys' hidden depths feel like the ultimate Easter egg hunt. Fans organize watch parties where they synchronize frame counts and coordinate live chat to flag every odd camera tilt or sudden jump cut. They debate whether a muffled scream in one episode foreshadows the tragedy that Cassidy's unearthed scripts described in detail. These communal viewings resemble digital essayances, collective efforts to connect with the creator's suppressed ambitions. Each discovery, no matter how minute, becomes a shared victory, a reminder that audiences can reclaim narratives from the hands that tried to sanitize them.